Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Wednesday, October the 12th, 2022, and this is the meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals pursuant to the Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022. This meeting of the Somerville Zoning Board of Appeals will be conducted via remote participation. A recording of these proceedings will be accessed by at any time using the registration link at the top of the agenda. Tonight's agenda is, first thing on the item is approval of minutes. Madam Clerk, would you please make the motions?
Yes, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from our meetings held May 18th, July 13th, August 3rd, and September 21st, all of 2022.
Thank you. Second, please.
Second.
Seconded by Ann Brockelman. All in favor accepting as printed, please say aye. Catherine Garavaglia,
Aye.
Ann Fullerton,
Aye.
Ann Brockelman,
Aye.
and Susan Fontano, aye. Let the record show it was unanimous of all four members of the meeting tonight. Second item on the agenda is under the public hearings. It's 10 Oak Street. This case has been opened before, so we're just going to call it to order. 10 Oak Street, P&Z 21-132. Good evening, gentlemen and ladies. Oh, shoot.
Madam Chair, apologies. This is Charlotte speaking. I am just working on getting the applicants unmuted and able to speak.
Thank you.
Adam, you should be able to speak now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can, Mr. Dash. How you doing?
I'm very well. I apologize. I've been having GoToMeeting problems today, and I have to use my phone because it does not work on my computer for some reason. So I don't think I can share my screen, but I don't think that may be not a big deal on this particular case. At any rate, if I get cut off or disconnected, Peter Quinn's here. Again, Adam Dash, 48 Grove Street, Somerville, representing the applicant, Fidelis Bridge Loan Venture 5 REO LLC, the owner of 10 Oak Street. This is the second meeting, as you said, with the board on this matter, with the prior meeting being held on September 7th. And at that time, there you go. At that time, the board heard our application to extend for a year the prior permits granted by the ZBA in case 2018-10. At that time, the board had asked that the representatives from the owner group and that the general contractor appear before the board and that the property be cleaned up before this hearing. Tonight, we have John Lanciotti and Michael Fosnock for the applicant owner. I don't know if they could be promoted, that would be great. Wilson Ban from WR Builders, the general contractor. If you could promote Wilson, and then of course Peter Quinn, the architect, is also here. In addition, I would note that my client has cleaned the property since the last hearing. Photos of that cleanup that were sent and are attached to the supplemental staff report, which you should have. So at this point, the issue still exists, however, that despite our best efforts, the project cannot be built without this time extension. And I can say, I'm not going to go through the entire history all over again, but I just want to remind you that we've been working with ISD and with PP&Z with the city since last spring or summer to figure out what to do. My client filed 4 applications in 2021 with the city, and this one, P&Z 21-132, is the one that was determined to be the best way to go forward. And this project has experienced everything from COVID to the zoning change, to the prior owner going into bankruptcy, being sold to the applicant, and then working with the city to figure out with this legacy project, how to go forward with it. The board had asked Peter Quinn also last time about questions about the soundness of the foundation for its reuse, and Peter had said he was in the middle of evaluating that. So again, just to put it back into where we are, we just want to build the project that was approved by this board in 2018. But an extension is needed to do so. If it's granted, my client will move as expeditiously as possible to get it built, subject to the fact that we will need, as the staff report states, a revision to amend condition 1 of the prior approval to take into account the fact that the original structure was demolished by the prior owner. But we feel that that the delay up to this point has been reasonable under the odd circumstances in which we find ourselves. And we are, really chomping at the bit to move forward with it and hope that you would grant the extension. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we got some pictures, some photos in our packet. And of course, we have photos from the neighborhood as well. These pictures dated October 3rd. Those were from the applicant, I understand.
Yes, Adam Dash. Yes, Madam Chair. The board instructed us to go and clean up the property. The applicant did that and took some photos to show that that was done. And those are the photos that you have from October 3rd.
Okay. I want to check with the board. You all had your packets. Does anybody have any comment on how they cleaned up the area, or if you've gone by, or what you have to say about that? Because that's been a real thorn in the neighbor's side. So I'd like to address that. Does everybody feel that the cleanup was adequate? I mean, there's one in here with the front loader, or, whatever you call it. You can't be taking that out of there, I understand that. But there doesn't seem to, the grass seems to be all cut, the weeds are done, it's all raked and cleaned. So we all happy with that? Feel they made an exerted effort? Okay. And now, we had some other questions. Now the owner you said is John Lancelotti?
John Lanciotti and Michael Fosnacht are here from the owner applicant. I don't know if
I
it can
have-
be noted.
I have a personal comment. And then the board might have some of you in particular too. I understand there's been different owners and different banks and all that jazz. And you're the last one holding the bag. What's that noise? And can we get these gentlemen on film or anything here? Can we see what they are? You're looking at us, but I'm not looking at anybody.
Yeah,
Any chance of that?
Yeah, there's
Madam
Adam
Chair,
Dash. I apologize that I'm having to use my phone because the GoToMeeting isn't working, so I can't get the screen to work.
Madam Chair, this is Charlotte speaking. I have unmuted Michael Fosnacht, but don't seem to be able to promote him. I would assume that they are also using a phone, and that is the only member of the applicant team that I see present.
Hi, this is Mike Fosnacht. Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Okay, great.
you can't go on screen.
So sorry, I'm the executive director at Fidel Sylvesters, the ownership group. As you mentioned, we did, obviously we were the lender, original investor that purchased this loan on 10 Oak, and that original owner was not able to complete this project and defaulted under the loan documents. And yes, we did have to take over this project through a foreclosure process. And our intentions here are to finish this project, get this project to a state where the neighborhood, the city, all can see a completed project that they would be happy with, instead of, the state that the project is in right now. So that's really our intentions here. Obviously, this is not in anybody's expectation of how we wanted this to be, but this happens in our business. And we want to make everything right. We do not want to make any issues with any neighbors. And when we were made aware of the issue from the last meeting with the overgrowth, we made immediate action to remedy that situation. And we'll continue to monitor the property and make sure until we get the approvals that the property is cleared, cleaned, and there's no issues there.
Okay, well, that's my point I want to bring out. I feel that We have to be a voice for the neighborhood and for the city. And we don't like things hanging around and going on and on and on. And we hear about the COVID and we hear about a lot of other things. It's like before we had to go to meetings up City Hall, and now we can't even, you only can work with your phones and your wherever you are, and we can't see you, we can't hear you. So I think everybody would start kicking it up a notch, showing a little bit more respect for the city of Somerville.
Yep.
This is a legal meeting. It was posted. You know, you guys think you can work off your phones all the time. The phone's the be all end all. I see Mr. Quinn, as usual, is a professional. He's here. He's ready to roll. We're ready to roll, and you guys aren't. So this is my point. We're supposed to go forward with the trust that everything's going to go quickly, efficiently, and effectively. And, you know, go ahead. So does anybody have any questions for these gentlemen? Or do you have questions we had last week that we were waiting for answers for? Who is Olga Ban? Hi, Olga, you're on screen. Who are you?
We are WR Builders. Wilson and Olga, we're WR Builders for the contractor.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming on screen. So anybody on the board here that had some outstanding comments from last meeting, please raise your hand. Catherine Garavaglia, what do you got?
Yes, Madam Chair. I just wanted to maybe refresh the rest of the board's recollection, but we had 595 Broadway with the same developer with the same exact types of complaints. I am almost certain that that is the case. So, and that was back, I believe, in July. So we reprimanded this same group of people, I believe, for the exact same behavior, and they allowed another property to go into the same type of disrepair. And now they're back asking for the same sort of relief again. I'm not sure how we can go forward with this, wondering what we're going to put in place to have them actually keep the property in a condition that is suitable for the neighborhood.
Well, I think, thank you, Catherine, for bringing that up, because I had the same, I have some footnotes here that I made today, because I wanted to refresh myself with a lot of the literature that we have to read. And it did come up about 595 Broadway. It came up about another property in Malden. There was a couple of things that came up. What I think we can do is if we approve the extension, we also can approve it with a condition that states specifically how we expect them to go forward in maintaining the area in their word. And my question to staff is that if we do something like that, we go forward and we're seeing it's getting neglected again, the sidewalk's not shoveled, it's not being maintained, I know after a snowstorm, they're not working there either, but they can shovel the walk. The city should be going out there and finding them every day like they would me at my house for not shoveling. I want to know if we make a condition, we approve this tonight, the extension, we wait for the special permit amendment, we make a condition, how do we hold them true to their word? Charlotte or, oh, hello? Somebody's got their hand up. Ban, Olga Ban?
Yes,
Yeah,
WR Builders. I know you've mentioned a couple addresses, but seems like they may be the owners. However, they're retaining us as a contractor, so this is our responsibility to keep the site clean and maintained from now on.
and that's your job. You're the new contractors, you're saying, and that's going to be your responsibility.
Correct. I just want to make a point of that. Yes, they're owners and they own other projects and developments. However, in this particular case, 10 Oak Street is our responsibility, WR responsibility to keep it maintained, safe,
Yep. Mhm.
and sidewalks shoveled. Yes.
Beautiful. Okay. Because we want to go, if we go forward tonight, we want to do it in a positive fashion.
Right.
And even for you guys in the future, if the other jobs come down, you'll know how to operate what the city expects. And I don't think we're unreasonable. I know some other communities, they're really tough, you know? I think we're pretty fair. Catherine, did you have your hand up again?
Yes, Madam Chair. I'm curious if the build contract has been executed and what is the estimated time for completion?
Can I speak? Hi, my name is Wilson, and my name is Wilson Ramiro Van. I'm WR Builders, and that's my wife, my partners, and my construction. We've been doing a lot of work in Somerville for quite a while, and he's one of as a contractor. I know a lot of people can say the same thing and promise. However, as soon they spoke with me about the cleaning, next day we are there cleaning because that's my name and it's my reputation and it's my family. So it's a family, it's a construction for it's me and her. So that's we can promise for you. About the time, our plan is to have about a year to finish the project. To give and take. Usually we take less, but for that kind of projects with the weather coming right now, and we understand Somerville because it's there's no come. We have two more projects in Somerville, and we always keep clean. And after the storm, as we spoke about it, sometimes complicated, but we have a team on site, and I have my own team. I don't rely only on subcontractors. So I have my own staff. That's why we can deliver the project in time for that. And I'm proud to say that we never delayed anything. That's one of the reasons they hire us because they know what we can do. And they had a situation before, they had a problem with the other contractors that was there, the owners. They don't want to do the same mistake. That's why they came to my office, we had a meeting, and I told them, that's my way, that's how I operate, that's how I do business. And if you don't want to hire me, that's the way. But it has to be me. I'm responsible. It's not going to be the owner for 12 months. So the face for this project is gonna be me. I'm responsible for everything that's gonna be from now on.
Great, thank you. And you know, this is important. We've worked with Mr. Quinn before, and we've worked with Adam in the past, and they've been excellent. So you got to surround yourself with talent, you know, and that's like us too here. We're looking for hardworking, honest people who want to make Somerville a better place to live and work. So I see the rendition here is in front of us. That's nice looking. Is this something you're gonna go for? Is this the plan to go forward with something like this? Emily, are you there?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm here.
Hi, is this the plan the office is expecting to go forward with?
This is the plan the applicant is presenting. This is their screen, but yes, this is the plan that was approved.
Good, all
And I
right.
would like to note in terms of timing, if I may, so I believe the applicant is requesting a year extension on the special permit. And so if they receive that application, if the ZBA grants that application or that request for the extension this evening, the applicant would need to come back for an amendment to their special permit to ensure that the plan complies, because there is some inconsistency with the original special permit, which was going to be modification to the building, whereas this is full construction. The ZBA could place a condition on the extension that the building must be maintained. I would suggest too that if the extension were to be granted and the applicant came back for the amendment to the special permit, they could, the ZBA could place an additional condition on any such amendment that the site must be maintained throughout construction. So that could be an option for a specific condition.
Can we, if we approve the time extension, so what is that? The clock starts ticking like it's like in October? So then we'd be talking October of 23?
That is correct.
Okay, so are we allowed to put put a condition on there about maintaining the property as, Mr. Wilson has promised to do that in spite of whenever the amendment to the special permit comes up? Can we do that?
Yes, Madam Chair, through you, you could place a condition on the special permit extension. The condition that the property must be maintained so far as the special permit remains valid.
Great, good. Yes, Catherine.
Yes, Madam Chair. I don't know that some of my initial questions were answered, and one of those was, has the contract been executed to start?
Yes, the contract is being executed.
I'm sorry it cut out, so I didn't catch you.
Yes, we already have the contract executed in place
Okay.
and working. That's why we already started. As soon as we signed the contract, we already started with the permit and clean the project. That's why we did all the testing and everything that's what's required. That's everything that's fine.
Okay, thank you. I guess my one other question might be just something for consideration by other board members. Given that this particular owner has had difficulties maintaining properties, I don't know if it's possible to put in a requirement that maybe pictures of the conditions have to get provided to us or Charlotte and staff. And if it's not, then they have to come back up to get permission to continue. It's onerous, but I think the community has lost a lot of faith with these owners, given their behavior.
Staff,
I can
staff, can I speak to staff on that?
Yes,
Either
Madam Chair.
Emily or Charlotte?
This is Emily Hutchings, Madam Chair.
Hi, Emily.
There could be a condition that photos would have to be submitted either quarterly or monthly. I would note that it would be the building department's role to enforce the permit. So it might be appropriate to say they must be submitted to the inspectional services department or the building department.
Okay. Thank you. Catherine?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that would be some type of a check to maybe help the community feel a little bit more secure if we were to proceed with this, that somebody will be getting feedback regularly. It's
Great.
atypical for what we do, but it's a possibility.
Yes, Wilson?
Yes, typical, we have a supervisors and we have a great software that we do reports every day on site, and we have every weekly as well. So in this kind of case, whatever we can do to make it the neighborhood like a more like a feeling about the construction is gonna be, because anyways on the end it's gonna be, we're gonna be doing the work and we want to make sure it's not gonna be the last one we're gonna be doing in Somerville.
Okay, great. Yeah, right. Thank you. Ann Brockelman had her hand up, and then Ann Fullerton. Ann Brockelman?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm in agreement with Catherine's request. I think the onus should be on the contractor to keep posting or providing evidence that they're keeping the site clean and tidy, as opposed to on the neighbors to watch and then complain, make a complaint.
Great. Thank you.
I wanted to ask about the schedule. What is your construction schedule? How much do you think you'll get done before the winter? You know, how long is this going to take? And I know there's delays in lead times, materials for procurement, all that stuff is still.
That's to you, Wilson.
Well, we have a big like team, and we already have all the subcontracts lined up for that. As soon as we get the situation and we get the green line, we already scheduled. I know about material, the way that WR operates, and we have a few trucks as well. If we don't get the material from one lumber, we travel to get the material. We are not going to be relying on one lumber to delay our projects.
So will you be framed out by the winter? Rough carpentry?
Green line, we're gonna start basically right away. I don't want to get to the winter without frame. That's a little more complicated for us, and I want my labor to be inside, my subcontractor as well.
Yeah, I have a note. This is Adam Dash as well. I want to make sure that if we have to come back for a revision of condition 1 to go from renovation of the old building to demolition and building of a new building that's exactly the same as was going to be done before, that can we start doing this work while that revision is pending?
Emily? Your question?
Oh, I apologize. I was looking at something related, but can you repeat the question? I apologize again.
Sure, this is Adam Dash again. Since we have to come back, as you stated earlier, and is in the staff report, for a revision to condition 1 of the old approval, because it's going from renovation of an existing structure to a demolition and reconstruction, even though the end result will be the same. Can Wilson start work while this revision is pending, or do we have to wait for the revision to go through the process and get approved by the board, or de minimis, or however it gets done, prior to being able to pull the building permit and starting work?
No, unfortunately, the work cannot start until the amendment is approved.
So that's gonna mean that we're not gonna get it started before the winter then, just so we're clear.
Staff or Madam Chair, how
Yes,
long will this amendment process take?
yeah.
It's not a few weeks?
Well, this is Adam Dashkin. Well, we can apply, obviously we need the extension. We can't apply for a revision to something unless you extend it. So it's sort of a 2-step process that has to happen sequentially. If you were to approve it tonight, then we could go and we could put it together for the revision. Really, it's just a matter of amending condition 1. I would hope that staff, the plan, PP and Z could approve it de minimis, because at the end of the day, the building's the same. However, if it has to come back to the board, then we'll have to get on a future agenda and it'll have to be noticed and all that. So at some level, it's, we have to file the application, and if we get on the agenda, we get on.
Adam, we get it, Adam. Adam, we got it. Emily?
Madam Chair, through you, Mr. Dash is correct. It would need to come back. So the applicant would need to file an additional application for a plan revision. And then the planning director would need to determine whether the revision is de minimis or a significant revision. If it's determined that it is not de minimis, it would need to come back before the ZBA at a public hearing. So that process, from the time they apply for the project revision, the plan revision, to the time they might get back before you, it would probably be a little over a month from now, or from however long they would take to submit their application.
Who's that person? Who handles that?
So I'm the senior planner in charge of assigning permitting cases. So I would make sure that this would be addressed and submitted to the planning director to review as soon as it came in. Or I would make sure if I were absent, I'm about to be out of the office for a couple weeks, I would make sure that have someone who is reviewing the applications that come in my absence to make sure that plan revision applications go to the planning director. And so then she would make that determination. And then if it does need to go back to the board, I would assign it to another planner, likely myself, as I've been the one who's been managing the case at this point.
Okay. Ann Fullerton. Ann?
Madam Chair. Emily, so if this is declared non-de minimis, does it need to go through design review again, or is it just to zoning?
It would go back to just the zoning board.
Okay.
And then you would determine whether you would approve the amendment or deny it.
Right. And so, I mean, I applaud Olga and Wilson for being available and taking so much verbal ownership for the project, but I just want to be clear. This special permit is for Fidelis Bridge loan. It's not for Olga and Wilson. They are essentially contract employees of Fidelis Bridge loan. And right now, I'm pretty unhappy with Fidelis Bridge loan, frankly. I think that they're showing here tonight has been poor. They're showing previous has been poor. The property on Broadway is still a mess. I drive by it every day. It's still a mess. So while Olga and Wilson may be well-intentioned, they are not responsible for this property beyond their contract, which we don't know exactly what their contract defines their responsibility for, but ultimately they are not ownership of this
Right.
property. So I'm frankly, while I love the fact that Olga and Wilson are so engaged, I'm pretty upset at the fact that we are, again, being asked for a favor from an owner that doesn't seem present on their properties, multiple. So I'm worried that while we see a nice design that was approved several years ago, I'm worried that it's not going to actually look like this. It's not going to be an asset to the neighborhood. We have no idea what we're going to end up with ultimately. And that's why I was asking about design review and design approval, because when the zoning changed, zoning board no longer effectively has any control over final design other than envelope. So I'm a little concerned that this client is not trustworthy.
Thank you. I think we all kind of feel that. That's why we're still here tonight, even after the last meeting. I mean, they cleaned up, but we see what's going on. Yes, Catherine.
So I guess I have a question for the applicant team, which is how many projects have they completed? And I don't mean Olga and Wilson here. I mean the applicant team. How many projects have they picked up out of a foreclosure that they have actually built to completion?
Sure, I can, and this is Mike Fosnock. So we, our company invests all across the United States, not only in Boston. We've invested solely in loans, though, like it was mentioned, there are cases where borrowers go sideways and we have to take over properties and finish them. I would say in total, we've probably purchased 6,000 loans. And of those 6,000 loans, maybe 30 of them have gone to real estate owns where we had to complete the project and finish them. And what we do is that we leverage off the best talent in those local markets. And I think that we have achieved that here with Peter Quinn, with our architect, with Wilson, who we have about a 7-year plus track record with Wilson. We understand his work product. And the reason that we went ahead with Wilson was he doesn't cut corners. He has his name on this project as we do also. And he's going to get this project completed and exceed, not only meet, but exceed what our expectations are. So, we have always completed our projects. We're in this is not the best scenario for us. And we don't typically do this type of stuff where we're going in front of boards and whatnot. But we own this, we understand that, and we want to make this right. And we're going to do this right and complete it. And that's our objective here.
I don't know that you answered my question, which was how many projects have you completed?
So we've completed over 30 projects all across the United States.
How many projects, excuse me, this is Susan Fontano. How many projects do you have in Somerville right now?
In Somerville, as in REO, real estate? As a real estate, because we invest in loans. In real estate, we have, I believe, 2 projects.
What is that?
In
How
total.
many? How
2
many?
projects. 2.
So it'd be the one that Miss Fullerton recommended was 595 Broadway. And what's the other one?
And 10 Oak, this one.
Oh, and this one, okay. What's going on with Broadway?
So Broadway, again, this is a similar situation where it was the same sponsor for 10 Oak as in Broadway that walked away from the project. We had to take over that project. We're trying to get same situation. We're trying to get approvals. That property is a little bit trickier because there's Medford and also Somerville that have to approve that. And I think it's Medford, which we're expecting to have approvals in the next month. But again, our intention is to keep the sites clean, to keep the overgrowth, the snow removal, and we can promise that we'll make sure to have both sites cleaned up.
Dan Fullerton, what's going on when you go by on Broadway? Is it cleaned up? I mean, I know it's in disarray, but is there stuff out front and everything still?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Michael, who's in charge? Who's contracting that you keep the property clean?
We will address that right away. I have John Lanciati is our asset manager, our boots on the ground. We'll have somebody out to the property in the next week and have that cleaned up.
But here's the question. Why does it take somebody to police you? Why isn't John Lanciotti going by, like, there's two properties now you're saying in Somerville? You take a ride by one, you spin by the other to see what's going on. You know, you're under the microscope. We're looking at these things now, because let's face it, your reputation is what sells you in any business. I don't care if it's a restaurant or I don't care. You go by reputation, and right now your reputation isn't good, so it's ruining it for everybody else, the Mr. Quinns, the Adam Dashes, or even this Wilson gentleman. Why is this your standard of operation? Where's John Lancelotti? Are you there, John?
I believe he's on, but I don't know. He might be having trouble with his phone. But yeah, no, and we were not aware of the. Oh, sorry. We were not aware of Broadway and the the property is obviously an outdated property, but the site, we were not aware of that of the disarray until right now. So like I mentioned, we'll address that immediately, and we'll have somebody out to the property to clean it up.
Yeah, because we approved this a long time ago, and I know you were dealing with Medford, so we were trying to be real. We were trying to expedite as quickly as possible because it is an eyesore.
Yep.
Okay. So, okay, Catherine, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So trying to turn this mostly back to 10 Oak Street. But I do want to address that the applicant has stated they were unaware that Broadway was in disrepair when that was another topic of conversation in that hearing. So this is the second time on the same topic matter with the same group. Who's lined up for snow removal for both of these properties? Who's the contractor who's going to be handling it? What's the maintenance plan?
So for 10 Oak, we'll have Wilson will be responsible for the site and making sure snow removal is cleaned out. For Broadway, we will be engaging a contractor that will make sure that Broadway is cleared up. And snow removal, we'll have something out there for snow removal and everything for the winter.
Emily Hutchins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize. I'm moving back a little bit to a question that was asked before this about the board's jurisdiction and design review. I did want to clarify that because this project was approved under the previous zoning, that previous zoning still stands for this project. So the zoning board does have the jurisdiction for this project, or this approval that it had under the previous zoning.
What do you mean? What are you saying?
So you
gonna have to go under the scrutiny to the plan for the plan revision or something? Is that what you mean?
So no, Madam Chair, I mean that the board has the ability to review what they, everything that they had the ability to review under the old zoning. So if you were reviewing the floor plans under the old zoning, you still have the jurisdiction to review this, as this plan was approved under the old zoning, and they're requesting an extension and then an amendment. So you have the ability to look at the plans that were approved and ask questions about those plans.
Okay. We had some conversation with Mr. Quinn Well, some of the things you were gonna check about the foundation and stuff like that, Mr. Quinn? Our last meeting?
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair, and members of the board, Peter Quinn of Peterborough Architects, Davis Square. Yes, so, we just as for the record, the previous contractor who, defaulted on the loan, obviously, they had gone ahead and built the foundation without really telling anybody they were doing it, on the design side. And that's when the whole series of incidents has happened, including the foundation collapsing and so forth. So the foundation was rebuilt along that one property line and a few other locations. We have, with Wilson's team, we have done some extensive testing on it. We know there will be some remedial work to be done, but it's relatively minor, and I don't think it would prevent the project from going forward. I mean, it's not something that has to tear down the whole building and start over, like that. So, I was a little worried about it because we had a similar situation on the other side of town. Nothing to do with this client or contractor, where, building it sat for 2 winters exposed. And the foundation and there was quite a bit of reinforcement and rework that had to be done. But we know there's a few things, they're all, just be some reinforcement and a few patchings made. And I also would like to just mention something. There was a neighbor who had written a letter recently. I think it was the folks at 14 Oak Street were convinced that the new foundation was closer to their house than the old one. I do actually have the records here, and they are in special services. But I do want to state that the original foundation, the one that was torn, that one that fell down, was 4 inches, at least 4 inches into their property. And the new one that was built was 1 inch inside the 10 Oak property. So it was actually moved over 5 inches to make it conform, or at least not make it what do you call it, an incursion into the property. So just for the record, I state that.
Yeah. I'm looking here, it said, worked on the design, the special permit, testing's half done, new zoning, contractor. Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Anybody have any comments for Mr. Quinn? Yes, Ann, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not specifically for Mr. Quinn, but sorry about the dogs. So this is in response to Emily's commentary about the previous zoning, which she was responding to my comment. That's really helpful, Emily. And I think that one of the reasons I want to bring that up is because we have gotten comments from the public, from the counselors, and we have seen it ourselves where in the past, an applicant will show a wonderful design, but by the time it goes to ISD for permit, it's changed substantially in sort of its fit and finish. The envelope may be the same, but the quality of finish has changed substantially. So I want to acknowledge that, and the fact that when and if this project comes back to us for the de minimis review, I would want a comment associated with it that it has to appear in front for permit application exactly like it appeared in front of the zoning board. There cannot be any deviation from what's approved by the zoning board, with the exception of one thing. I see that in the drawings we have a brick foundation. It looks like a CMU block in a brick foundation, probably because that's what was there previously. And what is actually built is a cast in place foundation. So
right.
Obviously there is a deviation already existing, but I want to make sure that that doesn't unroll further. And again, I've lost faith in this particular owner applicant. So I would want it to be as strict as possible.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm looking also at the staff report from September 2nd, 2022. And in the summary of the proposal, it says the structure and converted from 2 to 3 units. Okay. So, Ann Brockelman, do you have any other questions? I'm gonna see if the, I don't believe I closed the public portion. And I want Charlotte, are you there?
Yes, Madam Chair.
I want to say publicly, would you like to have your timer on, please? And I'd like to say publicly that I don't want to open up a whole big thing and a whole bunch of people speaking. We've got your beautiful letters, we've got emails, and you spoke at the last meeting, and I feel you were all very nice and eloquent and polite. But I'd like to hear if a couple of people at least that had sent us this information to tell us, did you have any faith restored in them going out and cleaning up and trying to get on this and fix everything up? Does anybody have their hand up, Charlotte?
Madam Chair, give me one moment. So for anyone who wishes to speak, please put your hand up. And, briefly, anyone who is not speaking, please mute yourself. There's a lot of feedback, and this muting yourself will help. So for anyone who wishes to speak, please raise your hand or send a message through the chat. We cannot accept public comments through the chat box, but you can let us know that you want to speak. And I'll just run through everyone that I see. First up is Tom Booth. Tom, you are unmuted.
Mr. Booth? Is there somebody else right now till we see what's going on, Mr. Booth, Charlotte?
Yes, next up is Michelle Hewitt. Michelle, you are unmuted.
Hi, I reiterate everything Dorinda said in her message that she submitted. Whether or not the site is clean is kind of irrelevant. It's too big of a property. It's too big of a proposed structure. It should conform to the current laws and zones and codes. I'm a neighbor around the corner.
Yeah, you're Michelle. You spoke the last meeting. Where do you live, Charlotte? Michelle?
I live at 7 Holtz Avenue, so which is a little private way off of Oak Street. So as a crow flies, I'm yards away, 2 yards away, maybe. Yeah.
All right.
And yeah, it's just I have no faith in this developer. We spent years getting all of the new codes in place. This neighborhood is the poster child for why you need good zoning and good codes, building codes, and it's no. Please no.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm very impressed by this meeting construct. Susan, you're doing a fantastic job. You're very fair to both sides. Thank you.
Thank you. We try. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very good.
Charlotte?
Next up is, yes, Madam Chair.
No,
Next up is Jennifer Hilario. Jennifer, you are unmuted.
Good evening.
As a reminder to all members of the public, I can unmute you on my end, but you are sometimes still muted on your end, which I cannot change. So if your microphone is red, it means you cannot speak. If your microphone is green, it means we can hear you. So if your microphone is red, just make sure to click on it once I say that you're unmuted. There you go, right now.
Hi, thank you very much. Madam Chair, I appreciate your question about whether our faith has been renewed in the developer or the owner, and it has not. I actually just drove by 595 Broadway this evening on the way home, and I was appalled about the condition. And I think that, as everyone has brought up, that's good evidence that we should not trust this contractor. Two things I do want to mention that leads to me being very concerned is, one is I don't want to put the burden on number 6 and number 14 and any other abutters to police this property. If there was a way to log how many calls have been made to the city and ISD about this property in the past several years, it would be intense. And that is not fair to our good friends, that they would be having to live against this, just like it's not fair to the people on Broadway. I also want to mention that I'm very concerned that this owner is going to flip the property to a contractor, maybe even this contractor. And with interest rates going up as high as they are, I'm concerned we're going to go into another loop where the contractor or the new owner is not going to be able to fulfill the promises, will default on the loan, and the property will go into foreclosure again. And so I think that in light of the history of this owner, that they should not be given any benefit of the doubt, and they need to start over with the current zoning laws.
Thank you.
Next up is Elaine Corey. Elaine, you are unmuted.
Thank you. I appreciate the ZBA taking so seriously the condition of the property in the neighborhood. Thank you for that. I just want to be sure that you pay some attention to the fact that they're turning this into a 3-family, and that the two of the units would enter and exit facing the neighbor, in other words, on the side of the building. The entrances should be on the front of the building and a back door on the back, but not creating basically a new sidewalk that faces the neighbor's house, which is incredibly close. I mean, we're talking about feet here, so that it would basically be creating a sidewalk with entries that go right out to somebody's dining room. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Bill Cavallini. Bill, you are unmuted.
Yeah, I want to add my voice. I live at 33 Oak Street. I want to add my voice to those that have complained bitterly about the condition of the property, both in terms of the swamp in the water that was stagnant for years, not months, not weeks, but years, and that the sidewalk was never shoveled. So in the wintertime with the snow, never, not once. So I don't. As long as any of the parties that were involved before are still involved, I and my household cannot support this development. And I would also echo the fact that the opening to the building, the entrance to the building being on the side in a very narrow space would not be allowed under the new zoning. The entrance might be allowed on the side, but they could not build this structure so close to number 6 because of the side yard requirement, as I understand it. So I'm opposed to this. I think that the new people involved should refile under the new zoning that was passed by the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Tom Booth. Tom, you are unmuted.
Hi, all. Thank you. I'll try not to take 2 minutes, and this is actually Jen Booth of 14 Oak, the direct abutter. I do want to stress that there is an issue with a property being built on the lot line within the property of our property. I understand the new zoning laws, and I want to stress to the board, I really would appreciate adhering to the new zoning that went across that the city all voted on, our council members agreed to. I think that you're putting a personal onus on us as abutters and 6 Oak Street. and that we would be forced to go into litigation to have something removed from our property. What was placed there after the sinkhole was caused by ripping out the entire foundation is not a foundation, it's a retaining wall. And there are no owners that have been in contact with us. And so for us to now go and seek out legal counsel, insurance protection, home insurance protection to protect against this property possibly being allowed from the ZBA board is onerous on us. So I appreciate the time and I appreciate all of the due diligence of the council, but this seems like the folks involved, the owners, the contractors, I'd like to see a new building drawn up to code.
Thank you.
Not a separate one.
This is Adam Dash from the, I'm having some issues with connectivity here.
Next up is Michelle Hewitt. Michelle, you are unmuted.
She already spoke.
Yeah, I already spoke. I'm done. Thank you.
Oh, she did?
Yep. Thank you.
Great, thank you. In that case, next up is Councillor Scott. Councillor Scott, you are unmuted.
Thank you, and thank you to the honorable members of the board here. You know, I just wanted to come in briefly to appreciate the things that have been pointed out about how this building wouldn't be allowable under current zoning, and pointing out how the situation in the neighborhood has changed substantially since their original approval several years ago, and the subsequent lack of any positive action, certainly some detrimental ones. You know, this is, I sometimes will appear to you before you to talk about variances that homeowners may be seeking because of the ways that there are unintended consequences in interpretations of zoning, or you know, a building that is the wrong building type inside a certain zone. And when those situations happen, it's not just a conversation about what that homeowner wants to do with their house, but also about how what they want to do is going to impact the neighborhood and the neighbors. And it's one of those things that I take very seriously, just as I know that you take your responsibility and your role here very seriously. In this case, this is not a conversation that has happened with the neighbors since this new ownership or new management or new contractor situation has happened. You know, the only conversations I've heard of happening have been when workers were occasionally on the site. And, you know, I can honestly say I have zero people from this neighborhood, zero of my constituents who are speaking in support of this. Everybody wants to see something happen on this property. And I am happy to facilitate a process that gets whatever ownership group to a solution that works under the current conditions and current zoning. But that is not this. Right now, as has been pointed out, putting the burden of enforcement once again back on these neighbors who, I gotta be honest with you, have been struggling to get basic enforcement from inspectional services for years now is, I think, not a realistic approach going forward. So I appreciate that this board tries to be accommodating, but in this particular case, this is not the way forward, in my opinion. I'm happy to work with owners, contractors, anyone. You know, it's a serious part of my job to work with the neighbors to find a mutually acceptable solution. This simply isn't one. So thank you very much for your consideration tonight and for taking public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Nice to hear from you. Ann Fullerton.
Madam Chair, actually, if Councillor Scott wouldn't mind just answering one question for me, and maybe some of the other public attendees might want to answer this as well. I want everybody to be clear that if we don't allow this project to be extended, things may remain bad, meaning get worse again before they get better for an indefinite period of time. Is that an acceptable trade-off based on the people that are saying, well, they want something built, they don't want what is proposed built? Is that a trade-off that you would find appropriate and acceptable as a neighborhood?
I can thank you for the question, Board Member Fullerton. I can speak for myself and for the opinions I've heard from people in the neighborhood, which is, current poor conditions are obviously unsatisfactory, but they should have been remedied years ago when the original building was demolished. The fact that we have not been able to get enforcement from the city is, I think, a separate issue from what you're asking. What you're asking is, is a further delay acceptable? And I would point out that based on the timelines that were discussed earlier in this meeting, the construction on the site is not going to happen before the start of winter. So even if this approval was made in great haste this evening, the conditions on that site would persist throughout the winter. So I 100% feel that there is a strong desire to get the site right. And if current ownership is unwilling to work with the neighborhood to get a design that would have support for frankly, even the modest variances that would be required to have something built here, that is a process that can happen over this winter and we can return to it. I don't believe there is any benefit to the neighborhood to an approval this evening. Certainly not in terms of speedy completion of a project here. But I'm happy to defer also to my neighbors who live there.
Thank you. Ann, you happy with that? Did he answer your question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the response and I understand his point of view. I do think that the neighborhood needs to be aware that the current ownership may decide not to build anything and look to sell the property if we do not accept the current proposal. I think that's highly likely. Not necessarily a guarantee, but highly likely. And the neighborhood would have to be prepared for an indefinite project that's incomplete or sort of missing tooth in their neighborhood. And I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that as the alternative and that again, people feel that that's comfortable.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd simply say that all of the comment I've received from people in the neighborhood is supportive of that. The missing tooth is one they've lived with for quite some time. It's the filling perhaps they're worried about.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Thank you, Ian. I had the same question today. It's one of my notes here. It was going to be my final thing to like all you guys. And I feel from the neighborhood, they're willing to take that risk. That's what at the end of the day, I said the same thing. If we don't extend this, then they have to come back under the new regulations. And that means nothing's going to happen for a year or so again. But I think the message I'm getting from Councilor Scott and from some of the neighbors, especially Jennifer, the last young lady that spoke, is that they just have no confidence in what's in front of them now, and they're willing to wait for something better, and they think they can get it. That's what I'm feeling, so let's just go around here. So at this point, I am going to, yes, Mr. Quinn.
Excuse me for raising my hand at this time, but in consideration of the statement that the building and site should be brought in compliance with the new zoning, I just want to remind everybody that this lot is zoned urban residential, meaning that it has to comply with its building form with the selections that are available under urban residential, and the minimum number of units is 4 units.
Right.
So in addition to that, there's no solution, and I have studied it extensively. There is no solution that does not require at least one variance. So in order to be able to proceed under any kind of new zoning scenario, you have to, it's essentially an unbuildable lot. And I hate to say that because it sounds like, okay, it's going to be a park. But of course that, people will, choke at that. But it's basically an unbuildable lot under the new zoning. I don't know why it was set up that way, but that's the way it is.
Thank you. Catherine Garavaglia.
Yes, Madam Chair. So I am joining in with my fellow Somervillians with our frustration with the owner and their lack of consideration and ownership of the property and just writing off REO, we don't have to do anything. I think that by extending the permit, it may give the board an opportunity to put in some pretty hefty considerations that we could have them meet about, we want a budget provided to us for what their snow removal plans are. We want the contractor information. We want to know exactly who's going to be doing what and when. And we could ask that all of that gets submitted to us. We could have that also submitted to ISD concurrently. Like, there are ways now where we could put more of a light on this team that we may lose if we just set this off, and it may just go back to being a swamp. And I know ISD is very busy, and I know that they have probably done their best trying to enforce this, but we've got an REO lender here. So I think whatever complaints have been made have probably been made to deaf ears. I'm guessing. I do not know. So there could be a way for us to help protect the community a little bit more by putting in very strict requirements, because Olga and Wilson have been, yes, they are contractors here, but they have been very upfront about their willingness to try to meet these. So that's a consideration. I don't know that I'm on board with it, but I'm thinking about it.
Mr. Wilson?
I know it's nothing to do with the case, but just because we are here today, represent how we are with this project and how we work. My wife is pregnant with 9 months and 5 days, and the doctor is about to call for the induction. And we decided to be here today, how important this business is for us, as all the other businesses we do. We have our offices in Newton. We live in Newton. We have a business everywhere, and my name is there. That's why WR is there. And I want to make sure that I'm transparent, like here right now, as you guys can see us. I could be on the phone. I could just say that I'm not going to be here because it's 5 days, and the next 2 hours they're going to call us for induction, and I need to prepare my kids for somebody help us. But that's represent ourselves. And my company and this client, when they hire us to do the construction, we have everything there to make sure that's for you. That's like how it's gonna be. It's gonna be the way that it is on the plan. If you guys approve us for, why? Because that's how the contract was signed. And it's not my intentions on the next times that's gonna be on board over here, more Olga than me sometimes, because as a contractor, I'm on site most of the day with my supervisors and project managers. So sometimes I cannot be on the emails and applications because I'm very busy and I take personally serious everything. I know the situation with in Somerville, and what I do right now with the snow removal for you is I have, beside of my team with the Bobcats and everything, I have a contractor, that's a subcontractor that works direct for me, doing all my property only for clean of the snow removal. Used to be sometimes like random people, and then I say, no, why you don't do that yourself? So we have a subcontractors to work direct for us as landscape company, and now they are closed down for the winter. So they only do snow for my business only. And it's I have everywhere. In Arlington, I have in Somerville, over there, no only this one. I have probably 5 in Watertown. That's what we are doing right now. So I'm pretty sure that I can keep the site clean for you, and you guys gonna it's the trust. I'm asking you guys to trust this time on us. I understand the neighborhood because our neighborhood is the same. It's everything for me, and I would be here if I was them as well because with no trust. And I'm asking this time because I spoke personally with the owner for 2 hours in my office, and I asked this time, you guys don't trust in him, but they hire us for, and they already paid us a down payment for that to start the project. How soon you guys let us do it? Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yes, Ian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering if there are any other public attendees that have raised their hands since Councillor Scott spoke.
Yes, I'd be interested.
This
And
is
or
Charlotte
even
speaking.
if somebody spoke and they really want to address this or talk back with TJ Scott, or after they listen to Wilson and Olga, what they have to say, if it matters to them.
This is Charlotte speaking. First up is Dorinda Jackwith. Dorinda, you are unmuted. And give me one moment to start the timer.
Thank you. Ready? I'll be quick.
Yes.
I directly abut this property. I've lived with the mess for 4 years. I lived with the mess with the owner prior to that. But the problem is not the mess. The problem for me is we live here. This is our neighborhood. The conditions, the criteria for extending a special permit were laid out very simply and very clearly by the staff report. Not one of them has been met. What you're asking us to do is, oh, well, let's let this developer do what he wants to do because it'll be bad for you if he doesn't. That's not taking me into consideration. That's not taking my neighbors into consideration. I met Mr. Bond the 1st of June when he came over and he told me he had bought the property and he was going to fix it. He could have cleaned it up that day. That was the middle of June. What he did was he had a huge front loader delivered, came back on the property again about a week later, and then disappeared. So that's a little bit disingenuous. But the bigger problem is, I'd like to say, is this is not a good choice for us. The choice to live next to a clean lot versus having a developer be able to do what they want and be in complete violation of so many laws and standards in this neighborhood that's being overrun by development, that is not a choice that a city agency should give a person who's lived here for 31 years. I'll live with it dirty. I've lived with it dirty. I will live with it clean. It should comply with the new zoning, the end. This owner, I would like to know if it's all possible, if it's appropriate for Mr. Band to tell me who is funding this project for him. Because I believe that the funding of these projects is a circular loop of people. Thank you.
Can I ask one question before you go away, Dorinda? Ms.
I'm
Jakewith?
here. I'm
Who
here.
did you say was there that day at the site for
It
the
was
cleanup?
Mr. Band. That was, I met Wilson in early June. He was working on the property. I'm retired. I'm your worst nightmare. I'm looking out the window all the time. I saw him. I went out and spoke with him. We had a chat. He was very, very clear that he was going to build there, that he had a relationship, that he had funding from Conquest Funding, which was the original funder of this project that went belly up. He told me that it was going to be great, blah, blah, blah. I told him that, there was a stop work order on it, which he did not seem to be aware of at that time. He went away. He came back a week later. He delivered the large, big, large piece of equipment. He's nothing but pleasant. He left that day. He did not come back to clean up the property until the 2 or 3 days after the last zoning board meeting. And that appeared to be a direct result of this meeting. So there's yes, if we, when the teacher says to do it, they do it. But it is not intrinsic to their behavior.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I have your other letter you sent us, and I appreciate you speaking tonight. Thank you. Okay, anybody else, Charlotte?
Yes, we have probably 3 or 4 more. Next up is Ed Markovitz.
Listen, we're going to do 3 more, and that's it.
Okay, next up is Ed Markovitz. Ed, you are unmuted.
Yes, and thank you. I'll be brief. I live at 6 Oak Street. I'm Dorinda's husband. We
have your letter.
I have, right. I've sat here dumbfounded at what appeared to be the zoning board ready to approve the special permit because they cut down the weeds. Okay? They're in no way close to meeting the requirements for the extension of the special permit. Number one. Number two, we have no reason at all to believe that this is a contractor and an owner who will work with the community and come up with a plan that enhances the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Next up is Tom Booth. Tom, you are unmuted.
Hi, all. Thanks again. And I appreciate being one of the three. I do want to stress that the words do not give me solace. I do feel a bit threatened in the context of do this or you'll get nothing. There are a dozen builders. I think how many houses on our own street in Oak Street, Somerville, Cambridge have been redone in the past 18 months. And the effort that's going to take to get this built is going to be more. The inflation, the impacts to mortgages, the impacts and changes to what buyers need, and the costs in regards of upkeep and maintaining that. I just have concerns, and I have a lot of concerns in regards of we're asking people to be truthful and show up, and I appreciate over you showing up, basically ready to have new family, but the owners aren't here for you to defend you and what you're claiming to do. And so there's just too many pieces. And I do think that it should go back into foreclosure if they don't want to build a house. And if they don't build a house, you're kind of proving us all right, that they were never intending to do it. So I take on the challenge to ask them to do the due diligence of the right variances, maybe 2 units off the lot line, give some space, and come back to us with something we can react, or you all as our board can react to as ZBA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, or last up, is Bill Cavallini. Bill, you are unmuted.
Hi, it's not really Bill, it's Kate Byrne, and I'm at 33 Oak Street, and I just want to say that I think that the impact on the neighborhood has been so horrendous over the last 3 years that to think that we should trust these folks to do anything different than what they've been doing all along is just untenable. And I have called ISD a number of times to complain about both the snow not being shoveled, about the mosquitoes and swamp in the summer. And if you look at this property, you see a tree that is growing up in front of the property was not there before. And there's a full tree growing up. And this is so, to put the neighbors, especially the neighbors right next door, through all of this for years, to have to look at this and to have to deal with this is so outrageous. I need the planning board, I need you guys to think about this and really not let this go forward. And again, I agree that it feels like a threat. If you don't give us what we want, then we won't do anything at all. Well, you know what? Put a park in there. Good. I'm good with a park. That's fine.
Thank you very much.
That is the last person.
Okay, I want to close the public portion now officially. And I did have one comment when you listen to the folks speak, and I said for the last week and this week how polite and, it seemed like everybody was on board with this stuff, but I take exception to one of the last speakers, and it was, there's my little paper here with the name, Mr. Edward Markovitz. I just want to clarify something. You don't always see what goes on behind a question or goes on behind the scenes, that we do our homework and our due diligence from one meeting to the other. We reread the reports, we get new updates, we get new pictures and stuff like that. No, they shouldn't get an extension because they took out some weeds. But that isn't what all this talk is about. all this talk to me, and I might be speaking out of turn, I don't mean to offend any of my board members, but all this talk is proving integrity, credibility, honesty, due diligence. Anybody can come here tonight, be it the loan officers, the contractors, whomever, and tell us everything till they turn blue. What is the delivery? That's what this is all about, delivery. And right now, there's no delivery. And I'm listening to Wilson and his lovely wife, and I hear all this stuff, and then I hear this woman come forward and say, no, I met with him, and he never came back. You know, there's holes being shot through everything. So I'm telling you, what our criteria tonight is, we have to figure out if the applicant made the efforts to construct the project expeditiously as possible. And I do know they ended up getting a work stop order because they ripped down a wall without permission. They're going from 2 to 3 on the building. And, you know, they didn't maintain, they had nothing else to do because they couldn't work on the building and they couldn't maintain the property. Because I asked specifically today, when you have a stop work order, does that forbid people are going in and still maintaining the property for the neighborhood? And they said, no, it's nothing to do with that. So I think we're ready. I think I'm ready to vote tonight. It's the pleasure of the board if you just want to go on another week for whatever reason, but I think I'm ready to vote. I don't know, Ian and Catherine, if you want to raise your hand and say something to me, please do. If not, if we're ready to vote tonight, tell me you want to vote tonight or not vote tonight.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I
Ann
am also
Fullerton.
ready. I'm also ready to vote tonight.
Okay. Ann Brockelman, are you ready to vote tonight?
Yes, Madam Chair.
And Catherine Garavaglia, are you ready to vote tonight?
I think if I have to vote tonight, am I allowed to say which way I think it's gonna go? Because I don't know that the applicant's gonna care for my response.
Well,
I don't know what else could help change my response.
yeah. Well, if you feel you want to discuss it openly, it's your prerogative. What would your vote be?
I've been struggling throughout this meeting. I think it's been pretty clear, trying to find a way to get to yes.
Yes, I saw that in
While
you.
also trying to meet the needs of the community and maybe find some way to throw up a wall to help them feel better. But I don't know that there's a way to get there from what we're hearing with the rest of the community. But we've heard from Mr. Quinn, who has been there and guided us through many a project, that this lot's not really buildable and the requirement would be 4 units. And I feel like that's going to end up possibly being worse. But the community says that they'd rather work through that process. And at a certain point, we are a quasi judicial board who has to make our best reasoned judgment. I'm not finding a way to get there.
Okay. Well, you know, it's a quorum. They need all 4 tonight. This is what the board has to offer, and I'm ready to vote. You know, I don't feel that they've proven without, you know, any the expectations. I feel they didn't meet them. That's it in a nutshell for me.
Madam Chair, you hear me?
Mr. Dash?
Yeah, sorry, I've been fading in and out on this meeting, so I heard the last little bit there. I guess I would ask the client if he would like to continue this matter so we could discuss it, because it's a little difficult to do this when we're not all in the same room before a vote, or whether we wanted to withdraw the application. I don't know if are you there, Michael?
Yes, I'm here.
would you want to, yeah,
And say that again. What's the question?
would you want to
How come you
continue
didn't
it
hear
or?
it the first time? You know, we don't have to approve a continuance either.
Understood. I'm just seeing whether or not my client, if you, I'm sorry to have to do this on you live, but I have I'm not standing next to him where I can lean over and ask him. So with your indulgence, I don't know, Michael, would you want to ask for a continuance if the board would grant that or withdraw the application without prejudice, or do you want to go forward with the vote, I suppose is the situation.
I would lean on your recommendation also.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might be better because we would have to go back and talk with inspectional services again and find out about the any alternatives. I mean, we've sort of been through this with them and there really weren't any, but I think we can go back and see if there's any creativity that they have at this point and whether they've thought about it any further, if this avenue isn't going to be productive, and then we could maybe withdraw it before the next hearing if we find some other avenue, but I'm not optimistic. But I guess I would say if we could continue it to allow us to talk to inspectional services and PP&Z, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm in agreement.
Okay, so that would be the request, Madam Chair, if the board would so indulge us.
We're thinking. Yes, Ann Fullerton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Dash, I would suggest if the results of your discussions with ISD and or planning and ownership do not result in a substantial adjustment or in some way has a significant olive branch for the abutters, then to withdraw the application, in my opinion.
I don't even want it, Adam, I'm sorry to say this to you, we go way back, but if nothing's been resolved yet, it's not going to be. This isn't the 11th hour. You know, this has been going on now all these years, this extension. I wouldn't approve. I usually do the pleasure of the board. The pleasure of the board wants to give this case another couple weeks till our next meeting to see if they can pull a genie out of the hat. And I apologize for being fresh and sarcastic, but I really feel frustrated. I've been on the board a long time, seen a lot of things. And, you know, this is it's just too many hands in the soup, too much non-action. So I'm the pleasure of the board. If you want to continue it, I won't be a spoiler, but I think it's futile. So I don't know, Ann Brockelman and Catherine, if you want to continue, Ann said she would. Whatever you want to do.
Madam Chair, I think I'm with you on this, that I'm not sure what other information could be presented that might help swing this a different way. The only things that I can come up with are, at this point, we now have a question about when the contractor was hired based on public comment. So that just goes to what you're saying about confidence to people. So I don't know if a redacted version or front page or the execution page of the contract might help us get more comfortable. People, it's been years. I'm sure that's probably just I thought I met somebody else and we're all on Zoom video cameras and who knows what anybody looks like in real life. And like some type of a budget. This is a construction project. There was clearly a lender. There was a budget for this project approved in order to close this loan. It would have had soft costs in it that should have been relegated for maintenance. They're not getting used. I'm not sure what would do it. I don't know how to underwrite this to make it okay. I'm struggling. So I don't know if a continuance, maybe Attorney Dash has an idea of what he might be presenting if in a continuance, or what where this is going to go.
Adam Dash, what I would do, Madam Chair, through you, would go back to PP&Z and Inspectional Services and the various scenarios we laid out and see if any of, being that this is the board's tendency on this particular one, and see whether any of them are looking a little more promising, or whether there'd be some support for some dramatic relief if that's even allowed in this particular case because of the oddities of this lot. But I can't do that sitting here tonight. I certainly understand the board's position, and certainly your call. I'm just making the request.
So I say not to continue. Ann Fullerton, you say not to continue? Is that your final? Or Catherine, you're both on the fence a little bit. And Ann Brockelman is sitting there thinking.
Madam Chair, I agree. I'm inclined not to continue because I don't see what could possibly be presented.
You know, like I said, and people who know me and know this the years, I say the pleasure of the board. I'm not browbeating anybody. I'm just like Catherine said, can I say what I feel? I'm saying what I feel. I don't think it's right to sit here with a poker face and then pull a rug out from underneath somebody. I think all this stuff should have been handled, I've been working on, and all this in the past. I think the time's run out. That's it. And I think that I don't want to continue. And I just think it would be a waste of our time.
Madam Chair, it's Adam Dash again. Then could we withdraw without prejudice?
Yes. Yes.
And we would ask to do that then.
That's what I would have thought you might do, so that the thing isn't just thrown in a hole for, you can still do something. Withdraw from this, go to the planning, go get your heads together on this and come back ASAP with something. Time is of the essence. Winter's coming. You've got too much talent on your team, Adam, to let this die.
Thank you. We'll see what we can do, but it's it's a tricky one. But
Right.
if we could get to,
I know, but I
we'll
know
see
you've
what-
got talent there. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Ann Brockelman, you never said anything. Are you ready to go with the flow to approval, withdraw without prejudice on this case for this team?
Yes, Madam Chair, I was just thinking I didn't want to put the neighbors through another meeting where they'd have to come, take time, rally, state their case
Right.
over again. So I wanted to spare them of that, that they have been heard.
Great. So could I, the clerk, Madam Clerk, could you make a motion to accept the applicant's request for withdrawal without prejudice?
Yes, Madam Chair. Do I need to say the P&Z number for this?
Yes, you have to say the whole thing. The
All right.
address, the number. Yep.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to accept the applicant's request to withdraw without prejudice for P&Z 21-132 10 Oak Street.
Thank you. And that's made by the attorney, Adam Dash. And may I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ann Brockelman. All in favor to approve the withdrawal without prejudice, please say aye. Catherine Garavaglia.
Aye.
Ann Fullerton.
Aye.
Ann Brockelman.
Aye.
Susan Fontano, aye. Let the record show the request was approved unanimously. And I would just like to say, I wish you luck, Adam. I know you'll get going with this with Peter and whomever else is involved, and look forward to seeing you come up again.
Thank you for your time and consideration on the project, Madam Chair and members of the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, does anybody need a recess, or do you want to go right into our next business? Okay. No recess, ready to rock and roll. Emily, thank you for all your help tonight. She's going away. There, she's back.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I went away right as you said my name. I apologize.
That's okay. That's okay. Thanks for all your help. I appreciate it. Keep us on our toes. Keep us learning, huh?
My pleasure. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Good night, hon. Now we have a other business. We're going to review and vote. Well, I guess not vote, we're just going to review some of the changes of 34 North Street, which is the Clarendon Hill 40B. And I think John Springfield's here in Charlotte. Hi, guys.
Hello. So I am just going to quickly give an overview of process, and then I will hand it off to John to talk substance. So process-wise, this is a 40B that was approved.
Charlotte?
Yes.
Hi, I'm sorry. I hope I don't insult Mr. Springfield, but could you introduce yourself to us and tell us who you are and what you do? I don't know if all the board here knows that.
Sure. Hi, my name is John Springfield. I'm a senior project manager at POA, Preservation of Affordable Housing. We're a nonprofit based at 2 Oliver Street, Boston.
Thank you very much. Thank you, John, and welcome. Charlotte, please, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but.
I have also promoted Corey Mann and Kendra Halliwell, who are also part of the applicant team, but I will let them introduce themselves once we get over to talking substance. So procedurally, this is a request for the board to evaluate whether or not the modifications are substantial. So with a typical project, the board approves something, and then if there are revisions to that project, those revisions are reviewed by the Director of Planning, Preservation, and Zoning, who decides whether or not the revisions are substantive and need to come back to the board, or are minor and can be approved by the director. With a 40B, the ZBA is the one who decides whether or not those changes are minor. So today is kind of the board's chance to discuss, and we will need a vote, but it's an easy vote. The board's chance to review and discuss whether or not they think the changes are minor. The criteria that is set out in state law for what an example of a minor or a major change is can be found on, I believe, page 3 of the staff memo. It's a different set of standards than for projects that come under Chapter 40A, but that is kind of the general process. If there are any questions about that, I'm happy to describe more, but I think that sets us up pretty well. And then I will hand it off to John and the rest of the applicant team for substance of what is being changed.
Great. Thank you, Charlotte. Can the board see my screen? Is that visible?
Yes.
Great. I see nodding. Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, board members. So I'm here on behalf of POA and SCC. I'm joined by Corey Meehan, who some members might remember from a little while back in 2020 when this comp permit application was before you and approved. Also, Kendra Halliwell from Icon Architecture and Debbie Horowitz from Blueskin Stores. And since there are some new members on the board since 2020, I'll go through a very brief overview. I'll try to keep it as short and sweet as possible, and then really focus on the 3 modifications under consideration. So this is the Clarendon Hill site. It's along Alewife Brook Parkway and Powderhouse Boulevard. The existing buildings built in the 1940s past their useful life, planned for comprehensive redevelopment. This is the approved site plan that was in the 2020 comprehensive permit. It includes it replaces all 216 existing public housing homes with a 1-to-1 replacement, allowing all families to return, and extends affordability in perpetuity. It adds new affordable and market rate units for a total of 591 rental apartment homes, 3 new streets, a new half-acre park, and some improved adjacent pedestrian infrastructure. The project will be built in phases, and the Somerville Housing Authority will continue to own the land, and the development will enter into a long-term ground lease. So these 3 modifications tonight are focused on POA's first phase building, which is shown here in the left corner of the site. And it's a 10-story, 168-unit building. And we're excited that we've received final construction pricing and a path for a groundbreaking in December. So this long-awaited project is really getting close. And then just briefly, so this building includes 130 replacement public housing units for returning families and 38 new permanently affordable housing units. permanent homes for 168 total apartments. And
John, you're fading in and out, your
oh, I'm
sound.
I'm so sorry, Madam Chair. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is that better? Okay, my apologies. So the comprehensive permit was approved with conditions in September 2020. As the drawings have advanced to the 100% construction documents, the additional detail has resulted in some small amounts of shifting, revising, and adapting. And that resulted in these 3 requests here related to condition 55, which is the facade articulation, specifically the window depth. Waiver 22, which is the specific parking count of structured car parking in the building. And then also this isn't a waiver or a condition, but a slight change to the site plan based on where Eversource approved the transformer location, which we believe is an improvement, but just wanted, since the comp permit references a specific site plan, wanted to highlight that for the board for your approval. So I think with that, I'll hand it off to Kendra, our architect, to talk about the details of the 3 waiver requests.
Great. Thank you so much, John. I hope you all can hear me all right. I've got headphones on. It should be good. And we are so excited. We're here. John is with POA and partnered with the Somerville Community Corporation in order to build these new homes for the existing and new residents. We've got 3 topics to discuss. First is the facade articulation. The language states to consider providing surface relief of at least 4 inches from average grade plane by recessing the windows or other architectural articulation. And so we are working, we're detailing, we are mocking up our construction system to build these buildings. As we are refining these details and figuring out how to ship, how to procure the materials to bring the materials here, we are tightening up the the details. As we look at the dimensions of the windows and within the wall system, we're looking at the exterior insulation, we're looking at the rain screen, the strapping, and the jamb extension in order to maximize the depth of the plane between the glass and the outer facade. We're really pushing that as much as we're able to, but we're able to reach about a 2.5 inch relief. So John, if you go to the next slide, we've got a couple of images here. One is the building overall, where you can see that the building facade steps in and out pretty significantly. We've put a lot of thought into how the massing breaks up, how it steps down the hill, including bays, cornices. There's a heavy cornice at the base, a cornice at the top. So we're really putting a lot into giving this a lively and fun facade. And then the detail here at the right shows that 2.5 inch inset. So we came here to ask you to carry forward with approval on this dimensional modification from a 4 inch requirement for the glass plane. Happy to answer any questions. We'll talk about parking now. We're requesting a reduction from 59 to 55 parking spaces. As we've been developing the structure of the building, we're bringing the structure down every 2 parking spaces. And doing this has set up a system where we ended up losing these 4 spaces. I think, John, if you go to the next slide, you can see the overall building, the parking level plan. So we have fought for every parking space, including bike parking. There's a lot that we're trying to fit in here, and wanted to show you that overall we're using the space as well as we can, but due to this structure coming down, we've lost a few spaces. So this is the second request that we're bringing you.
What was the excuse me,
yes,
Kendra, you said the second request regarding parking or for the night?
For the night. We're here for 3 things.
I get it. All right. Yep.
Great. Okay, the last third thing that we're here to talk about is the transformer location. We initially located the transformers in between 2 buildings on the long new Street 1. in between Building E, which we're here for, and the next building up the street. Through this coordination, we've relocated those to behind the building, accessed off Alewife Brook Parkway. Eversource has worked with us on this location, and we've also reviewed this with the city planners. And that team, we're all working to make this work. And this seems to be the best location. These will be screened and gated off from Alewife Brook Parkway with a fence and screening, as well as from the grocery store parking lot. And those are our three items that we wanted to bring to you this evening. John?
Okay, thanks, Kendra. Madam Chair, if I may just say one last thing before we open up for any questions. So I think, in the staff memo, which I know that you've reviewed in your diligence, I think there's staff support for the second and the third item in terms of the parking change and the transformer location. And then in terms of the first item, I think there's just a request for more explanation on why that way was necessary. And I think, like Kendra said, it's really to do with the sustainability of the building, to have kind of the thickness of the facade, to achieve the LEED Platinum that this building has committed to through the zoning requirement. And then I think the second piece for that first facade request is just in terms of these are panelized wall sections, and we did explore the 4-inch depth, and it creates a different dimension, and it may not sound like much, but it actually affects shipping costs, and just the way that this the panelized system comes together. It would just create kind of a high cost for the project that we think is still meeting the project's goals that the ZBA set forth a couple of years ago. So with that, we'd love to have any questions.
When you say the 2.5 inches on the windows, so does the person feel that on there? Is the window in the apartment more or out of the apartment more? You have a window usually goes in flush and you put your molding all around. So you're saying there's a differential of 2.5 because of the wall, the outside, the exterior. So how does that affect the window? Does the tenant, does it affect them at all, or is it all on the outside?
I would say the goal is to push the window in further. It doesn't affect the space inside. Maybe there's less of a window sill on the inside, more of a window sill on the outside. I think that this comes from many new construction buildings look very flat on the facade because that glass plane is pushed out. We have included in our design a jamb extension in order to be able to push the window in 2.5 inches, which is a good, we're doing what we can to do this, but additional inches create additional depth for shipping.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions? Yeah, Ann Brockelman have a question?
Yes, I mean, while we're on this slide, I'm just curious. So are you asking for this elevation or this phase or the entire project to be, and we're using, it's confusing because we're using elevation relief versus zoning relief. So maybe you can find another word for depth, I guess, difference in depth. Is it just for this phase or the entire project? Because we don't know shipping, supply, demand, that changes, right?
Well, this is the first phase, and we're figuring this out as we go, as it's a new system. This is the system we are intending to carry across the site. Aspects of it might change, but this is the system we're proposing. John, do you want to add anything?
Oh, no, I think that's a really great response, Kendra. And I think, I mean, this request is just for this phase. It's possible once we figure out, like you say, the shipping, the dimensions for the other buildings, we might have to make this request again, but we just don't really know yet. And I think, I think the language says, consideration. I think we spent a couple months really looking at different options. I think that we're trying to approach it in terms of the other facade relief in addition to the window, sorry, not relief, facade depth in addition to the window depth.
And so this is the punched opening, right? How the window unit is punched opening, because there are different ways to create depth as well. Does the stipulation talk specifically about glazing to the outermost edge? Is it that well defined? I mean, you are defining as plane of glazing to the outermost edge of the jamb, right? You talked about the jamb extension. Providing service at least 4 inches average grade plane windows. Okay. I mean, that's pretty open-ended, but you are interpreting it strictly in a more strict manner, actually. Right? You could play with that more. But you're saying that the glass plane of glass to the edge of the jamb is 2.5, not 4. Okay.
That's right. And if I may, through the chair, you know, we kind of read it as open-ended as well. And so, you know, we talked to city staff, and I think just to be extra cautious and conservative to make sure that we're compliant, wanted to raise this issue since it could be read kind of either way, I think.
Yes. May I continue, Madam Chair?
Absolutely.
And if you go back to that elevation, where's there other relief? I see different colors. You know, the light to the brown to the gray. Can you?
Yeah, there's quite a good amount of depth in the volumes on the facade.
Yeah.
Those bays step in and out. There are levels here. We have layered in sort of larger volumes that extrude towards us.
Beyond 4 inches from
yes,
the.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So each of those dark brown, the medium brown are set back. The dark gray are frames that set forward.
And there is some play beyond 4 inches in those differences.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if I would. I can see how it could be a challenge or a burden to strictly interpret, you know, edge of jamb to glazing is 4 inches, because then everybody has to use these really deep punch opening windows. So I do sympathize. I don't see an issue with maybe going phase by phase, Madam Chair.
Yes. That's what John said. This is phase 1 right now. We're going to approve that, but as they step down, I might need it again, depending on product and cost and whatnot.
I can continue with the next one. No one
Please feel
wants to talk about
right
this
ahead.
one. The parking, are we losing EV ready spaces? Can you, or just, are they not designated? Are we using general, or are we going from standard to compact, maybe, you know, more details about what we're losing?
We're not, we will maintain the number of EV parking spaces and we'll comply with the number of compact spaces. But sort of as the overall count is reducing by 4. I don't believe it would reduce the number of EV spaces. We've committed to those in the Sustainaville document, and I think we're sticking to those.
So 4 standard spaces, and EV is, your compliance is based on the number of spaces or percentage of spaces?
I think it's a percentage, but I think we would be comfortable with keeping the number that we're committed.
Okay, thank you.
Are all the spaces, other than the EV, are they all compact, the rest of them? Or is there some fuller size?
I think that there's a mix.
Okay, that's all. I thought there was too, but I wasn't sure.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Ann?
So are we here to decide if these changes are de minimis or not, or if they're acceptable? or not?
This
Charlotte,
is,
answer.
this is Charlotte speaking. So I'm going to use the language of substantial or not substantial because de minimis is a, depending on how you look at it, much higher or lower bar. De minimis changes care about much more detailed things than substantial or insubstantial. So I don't have it off the top of my head, but I believe one of the examples that the state law gives for what an insubstantial change is changes in materials, changes in the number of bedrooms that are less than, like changes in less than 10% of the number of bedrooms. Like it is a, insubstantial is still a pretty big field, whereas de minimis is really like a lot more narrow in particular. So the question tonight is, are the changes that they're proposing substantial, or are the changes that they're proposing insubstantial? If the changes are determined to be insubstantial, they're just approved. I'll write a letter confirming that the board has determined the changes to be insubstantial and will be done. If the changes are determined to be substantial, which it is staff's opinion that they are insubstantial, but the board is welcome to vote however the board sees fit. But if the board determines that they are substantial changes, we'll advertise them for a public hearing and they'll be back before you to discuss whether or not to approve those changes. But tonight, the question is just substantial or insubstantial.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Can I go back to the parking again? The one that compared before and current. So proposed carbon 59, is that what's required or you're above what's required to begin with? Or the ratio?
This is Charlotte speaking. So I will let the applicant add more, but this is not in the transit area. So they're required to have a minimum of 1 space per unit. As part of the original approval, they've received a waiver request to have significantly less than 1 space per unit. And as part of reviewing those waivers, the Mobility Division also expressed their support for a further reduction if the applicant saw fit. So staff has no concerns about this additional reduction. This is a reduction in the parking count of 1 building. The overall parking count of the site continues to be in the 360s or so. So there are many other parking spots that are not part of this building or this particular request. But this would be an expansion of the waiver request.
That's helpful, thank you. Again, just this phase. Right, as we get to the last phase, we might see some reductions differently because it's like our last chance to get certain things in. This is the first phase. So maybe you're benefiting from that as well.
Ian, when you're
Nothing
through,
else for me. I'm through, thank you.
So why are we reducing the parking?
So I think I can, Madam Chair, I can start a response and Kendra can fill out the details, but I think, our goal is really to maximize the parking in the structure and also maintain the bike parking commitments that we've made. And so we're using all of the available space, the structured parking space in the building, but just given where the support columns have to go when the building was fully designed, there's just a little bit less space for car parking. Kendra, feel free to add anything.
That really is the brunt of it.
The cars are outside?
No, this is all structured parking underneath the footprint of the building, so we're limited.
Okay. All right. Oh, good. That's the answer right there. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Are we ready to go forward with a vote on this? That it's either substantial or insubstantial? I am. Ann Fullerton is. Catherine and Ann, ready to go? And
I'd like to hear from the board. Everyone thinks it's substantial. I mean, I will defer
I
to
think it's
majority,
substantial,
insubstantial.
I feel.
Okay.
I think they explain the parking right away, the support columns. I mean, that's what are you gonna do? You gotta hold the building up. They said they wanted to put 25 more bikes in, that'd be another story. And as far as the first phase, I like that we're gonna approve it on the first phase and go forward. They said cost, availability, those were the factors to weigh in. So I find those are very reasonable, very fair. And I don't think either one is gonna make a big difference in this phase. What is this, E we're calling this? A B,
It's
what is-
building, Madam Chair,
what is it?
building E as in
E, that's what I thought. Okay,
ele-
that's what
elephant.
but when you were showing the graphic at the beginning, was that a B?
So it's lot B. The ground is
Okay.
B.
You're trying to
The building is
pay
built-
attention here. Don't think you're gonna do so. I was paying attention. I thought I
Very
saw
sharp,
a B.
Madam
I
Chair.
thought I read an E. I'm glad I went to school for these alphabets. Thank you, guys. No, I have no problem with this tonight. You know, this presentation is fine and got to get going, got to see what's happening as we go forward. So I feel it's insubstantial. What does everybody else think? Insubstantial or substantial?
I agree.
You agree. Ian Fullerton and Catherine, you're okay with this? So
Yeah.
Charlotte, you want us to take a vote? Is that what this is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, a
So-
motion and a vote to confirm that the changes are insubstantial.
Correct. Catherine, did you catch that, hon? You're
Yes,
gonna
I think so, but I'm confident that Charlotte will save me if needed. Wonderful. Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to confirm and approve that the changes are insubstantial for P and Z 22-137 34 North Street, Clarendon Hill.
And this was on condition 55, waiver 22, and the transformer.
Second.
Yes.
Seconded by Ann Brockelman. All in favor, please say aye. Catherine Garavaglia,
Aye.
Ann Fullerton,
Aye.
Ann Brockelman,
Aye.
and Susan Fontano, aye. Let the record show it was unanimous. Thanks, guys, for hanging out tonight and waiting for us. We
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Madam Chair. Thank you, Board.
In the future. Charlotte, thank you for everything tonight. And
Of course.
see, our next meeting is the 20-something, isn't it?
Oh,
What is it?
our next meeting is the 26th. The
26th.
26th.
Thank you. Next meeting,
26th.
October 26th. Thank you, ladies. Have a good night. It was a tough one tonight, but I appreciate all your communicating and saying what you feel. Yes, Catherine?
Madam Chair.
Do
Oh,
I
we have to have
make-
a motion. I
Yeah,
know,
I gotta do a thing.
I know. All right.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Do I have a second? Who seconded that? Ian Brockelman? Oh, what a surprise. And seconded, oh, here we go. Catherine Garavaglia,
Aye.
Ann Fullerton,
Aye.
Ann Brockelman,
Aye.
Susan Fontano. Aye. And of course, we don't need her vote, but I'm sure Charlotte would vote aye. Thank you, guys. Appreciate everything
Have a
tonight.
good night.
All right.
Night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.